Welcome back. As I mentioned, we have Dr. Bob Burschauer here on behalf of Healing Hearts. What a lovely name. How are you?
I am doing fantastic, thank you.
Very nice to meet you, and we got a little acquainted during the commercial break, and it's an interesting story. So tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got to this point.
Well, I have been a veterinarian in the area since 1997. So I was a UC Davis graduate, did my undergraduate at UC Irvine. So I ended up moving back down to the area, spent about a year working in a general practice down in San Clemente.
Okay.
And really since then have dedicated my career to emergency medicine. So that's what I've done for 24 years now.
Right.
I had worked at a local emergency animal hospital down in Mission Viejo for a long portion of that time, and had been covering shifts at emergency and specialty hospitals on the side, and for the last 3 years been doing that all over the place.
And so as you had mentioned to me earlier, though, you took a leap of faith.
We did, yeah. So all these hospitals, you know, it's funny because every hospital that I've been working with through these years, you know, we're seeing more and more of them kind of go off to corporate medicine. And so it's actually hard to even start something up like this. You know, there's really just very little opportunity. These hospitals aren't really around. So my wife and I took a huge risk in doing a startup emergency animal hospital.
Right.
And that's, you know, Healing Hearts. We opened this really trying to actually bring something back to our emergency community that I think is kind of going by the wayside, where, you know, when we look at this, actually having a private-owned emergency animal hospital is really rare nowadays. And
really interesting. So are you saying that the majority of the emergency hospitals now for animals is corporate-owned? Is that what you meant?
That's what's happened, and it's logical. You know, you look at this, a lot of these people who started a business, you know, decades ago are getting to retirement age, and these are groups that are just kind of buying these hospitals up right and left.
I see.
So you can understand it from their perspective that they do have to retire, but it does make it tough to, you know, break into the profession if you're wanting to open up something like what we did with
and we're looking at some of the pictures, and it looks absolutely beautiful, and it's nice and roomy, and you've got lots of space for lots of different animals. And I know that you're mentioning, and this is interesting because we had spent time in Thanksgiving at the emergency hospital for my daughter's dog.
Yeah.
And when you talk about compassion, I mean, they were so nice and so kind that it really does take a lot of that, because nowadays, I mean, always people think their animals are their children, but I think now more than ever that is the case. And so for you to understand that is really important.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, every one of these veterinarians that I've worked with at these emergency and specialty hospitals, they are compassionate, they care, they want to provide the best care for your pet. So that hasn't gone away. I mean, but sometimes when you're working within these corporate hospitals, they're a little less flexible, a little more rigid than what we can be. So there's, it is a nice environment to work in. We, you know, have that ability to, you know, kind of work with people a little bit more than you can when some policies are rigid.
Gotcha. And we're looking at some of your key things here: compassion, commitment, community, and collaboration. Briefly, just explain that.
Yeah, well, compassion, you know, that's obvious, you know, that we absolutely are in this to support pet owners in the community. We understand what that animal bond means.
Right.
We are absolutely advocates for the pet. So, you know, that. But there's some of the things, you know, being a non-corporate owned entity, that you can have things that just make you feel better. That I had a couple, you know, just as an example with that their cat had gotten into lilies. And lilies are horribly toxic to cats, that they will put them into an acute kidney failure.
Oh, boy.
And when they came in, at the time, they were not in a financial position to actually be able to afford to do much with this.
Okay.
They did have enough money to actually treat this, but just not in a conventional way. You know, that
Sure.
you look at it and their finances were tied up with a mortgage, and
Sure.
they wouldn't have qualified for the traditional lines of credit, but that they had a check coming in 2 weeks to cover that.
Gotcha.
And the care wasn't really that extensive. It was really just a question of actually putting the cat on fluids for a 48-hour period. But without
Right.
that, the cat may have progressed into an acute kidney failure.
Okay.
Well, in a lot of places, you really don't have the freedom to say, well, we're going to do that.
Got it.
You know, for us, we said, well, we'll take on the care, and they can pay us in a couple weeks, and
Wow.
we can provide the care for that. And that is something that, as a veterinarian working in that facility, and for all my staff, that felt really good. You know,
Right.
and obviously, you know, to a certain extent, we can't take financial risks that are
Well,
crazy and actually cause our business to go bankrupt. But
Right.
to be able to have that flexibility,
I
that's
see.
the kind of thing that brings back kind of a compassion that I think our profession used to have. You know.
Oh, that's very interesting. Very flexible.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not the fault of the corporations. They just have management that
Sure.
is, there's much more red tape in those facilities.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
But,
What
yeah.
are some of the services that you provide? I mean, obviously, emergency care, like you just mentioned.
Right.
Is it just emergency pet services, or do you also do care?
Well, it is just emergency pet services in the sense that we are not their primary care veterinarian. We would not do elective services like spays. We don't do dentistry, vaccinations, things like that. But emergency care kind of provides a pretty broad scope, you know,
Yeah.
from critical life-threatening emergencies to, you know, even emergencies that occur just because your pet's your pet's vet isn't open, you know.
Oh,
So
okay,
even
gotcha.
something like an ear infection that hits on the
Right.
weekend or something. So there are minor things, but of course,
Right.
you know, we're very well set up to actually handle the more critical patients. So we're
Okay.
well set up with oxygen support, ability to go ahead and provide blood product, you know, anything
Okay.
that we need to kind of handle things at a higher level.
Okay, and all your surgeries
Yeah.
are done on site, I take it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and
All right.
we are working as well with a board certified surgeon who's actually going to be starting up in our facility on the 21st.
Fantastic.
So he's a family friend, and again, another private business, but Precision Veterinary Surgery is starting with us.
Okay.
So we'll have services of a board certified surgical specialist. His wife is dual boarded in critical care internal medicine, so it
Wow.
allows us to kind of provide workups at a little bit higher of a level and just kind of gradually grow this practice into something a little bit different.
Well, and we were just showing the
Yeah.
directions, and you're not far. You're right in Laguna Hills off of
Yeah.
Carlotta, which is wonderful because, you know, obviously for the folks here, that's
Mm-hmm.
super close. So if there was any emergency need, they can always go there. What are your hours? Is there a particular?
Right now, we are open from 6 in the evening on weekdays till 8 in the morning.
Okay.
And we're open all the way through weekends from 6 o'clock Friday clear till 8 o'clock Monday
Okay.
morning.
Okay.
And 24-hour on the holidays.
Okay.
As things pick up, we're likely going to evolve into a 24-hour hospital. But you know, we are going to kind of maintain this really tight relationship with our community area veterinarians.
Right,
So
right.
for us, that's essential to provide good continuity of care for these patients, is
Sure.
that we work really closely with the veterinarians in our community.
Right.
That for some pet owners, that's a way for us to actually provide a level of care that's affordable.
Sure.
That we can, you know, provide excellent emergency services, try to direct things where the best options are available to treat
Right.
their pet within their budget.
Mm-hmm.
For other people, that actually means working with some of the specialists in our community and actually getting them off to higher level of care, or
Right.
things that just can't be done outside of a specialty
Right.
hospital environment, like MRIs and back surgeries and
Sure.
things.
Sure.
So
Oh.
it's really a question of actually trying to, you know, work with everybody to provide the best level of care we can for their pets.
Right, and that's where your collaboration comes in.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for the
Yeah.
information. Welcome to the area.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
hopefully next time we'll have you come on, maybe you could give us some examples of, you know, outrageous surgeries that you never thought you would have to do.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much.
That sounds fantastic. Thank
All
you so
right,
much, Lisa.
thank you.
Yeah.
If you want more information about Healing Hearts, which is such a great name, you can always call them at 949-409-0333, or you can send them an email at reception@hheah.com. We'll be right back.